Hello and welcome to the Sharp Psych. Today, we'll cover a very important topic, which is how to emotionally detach yourself from a toxic relationship. A toxic relationship can be emotionally draining, leaving you feeling exhausted, unhappy, and unfulfilled. If you have these feelings, you're probably in relationships that are unhealthy and toxic. Being in a toxic relationship, whether it be a romantic relationship, a friendship, or a relationship with a member of your own family, can have a negative impact on both your mental health and your overall well-being. Detaching yourself emotionally from a relationship that is unhealthy for you can be a process that is challenging and painful, but it is essential for maintaining your own emotional health and happiness. In this video, we'll discuss some of the actions you can take to emotionally separate yourself from a relationship that is unhealthy for you. Before we get into it, make sure to subscribe and check out the links in the description for more videos and recommendations about mental health and well-being. So, the first question that we must understand is, what exactly is a toxic relationship? One definition of a toxic relationship is when one or both parties engage in behaviors that are detrimental to the physical and mental well-being of the other person in the relationship. Behaviors such as manipulation, emotional abuse, gaslighting, and controlling behaviors can fall under this category. Toxic relationships can manifest themselves in a variety of different ways, and they can exist between acquaintances, members of the family, and even romantic partners. The first thing you need to do to emotionally detach yourself from a relationship that is unhealthy for you is to recognize the unhealthy patterns of behavior and dynamics that are present in the relationship. This can be challenging due to the fact that harmful behaviors can be covert and might not be immediately noticeable. Nevertheless, there are a few signs that may indicate that you are involved in a relationship that is toxic for you. For example, a toxic relationship is when you spend time together and the other person is authoritarian, abusive, or manipulative toward your emotional state. Or after spending time with this person, you experience feelings of being drained and exhausted. Another example is when you find you're continuously justifying the actions of the other person to yourself, or the other person is possessive, jealous, or overly critical of everything you do. It can also be that you feel that this relationship is a one-sided, and the other party in the relationship is doing all the receiving, while you are doing all the giving. If you recognize any of these signs in your relationship, it's important to acknowledge that you are in a toxic relationship, and beginning to take steps to emotionally detach yourself is very important. Now that we learned about some of the signs of toxic relationships, let's talk about the process of detaching ourselves from an unhealthy bond. The first advice is to create boundaries. Building new boundaries is one of the most important steps you can take towards emotionally detaching yourself from a relationship that is destructive. You can protect your mental and emotional health by establishing boundaries, which are limits that you place on what it is that you are willing to accept from another person. The following recommendations are examples of possible boundary conditions. Reducing the total amount of time spent with the other person as much as possible, and refusing to engage in behaviors that can be harmful or manipulative to yourself or others. Also denying the other person the ability to exert control or influence over you in any way. Another piece of advice to create healthy boundaries is to not accept emotional abuse or being gaslighted and fighting back against it. Defining and upholding boundaries can be difficult tasks, especially if the other person is accustomed to exercising control over you and your life. However, establishing and maintaining healthy boundaries is critical to one's mental and emotional well-being. The second advice to detach yourself from a toxic relationship is to focus on yourself. It's very easy to become disconnected from someone's own wants and needs when the person is involved in a relationship that is unhealthy. You might find that you are always trying to please the other person, even if doing so requires you to forego your own happiness. It is essential to put the attention on yourself and your individual requirements in order to successfully emotionally detach yourself from a destructive romantic partnership. Self-care practices are one example of the kinds of activities that can help you to detach yourself from a toxic relationship, or putting your time and energy into activities and interests that bring you pleasure. It's also important that you put yourself in an environment where you are surrounded by optimistic and supportive people. Putting your attention on yourself can help you improve your self-esteem and boost your confidence, both of which can make it simpler for you to emotionally disengage from a relationship that is unhealthy for you. To learn more about how to boost your self-esteem, check out the links in the description below. You'll find our video explaining the 7 easy steps of how to boost your self-esteem. The third piece of advice: if you want to be able to emotionally detach yourself from a relationship that is unhealthy for you, you need to learn to say no. The ability to emotionally detach yourself from a relationship that is unhealthy for you requires you to learn how to say no. When you refuse to accept behaviors that are harmful or manipulative, setting boundaries and saying no means you are refusing to accept those behaviors. When you've made a habit of being someone who puts other people's needs before your own, it can be difficult to say no when they're asking you for something. Still, if you want to keep your mental and physical health in good shape, you absolutely must learn how to say no. Some of our tips for saying no include: try to maintain transparency and honesty in your interactions with others. Also, express your emotions and requirements by using I statements, as well as trying to maintain boundaries that are always firm and unwavering. It may be challenging to turn down an offer, but it is an essential step in the progress of emotionally distancing yourself from a connection that is unhealthy for you. It gives you the ability to set healthy boundaries and take charge of your own life. We also need to learn not to blame ourselves. It's simple to place all the blame on yourself when you're in a relationship that's unhealthy. It's possible that you're giving yourself the impression that you're not as good as you could be, or that you're responsible for the other person's negative behavior because of something you did. However, it is essential to keep in mind that you are not to blame for the actions of the other person in any way. It's not your fault if the person is unable or unwilling to treat you with respect and kindness. Everyone deserves to be treated in a respectful way. Let's look at some ways of helping you to get through these feelings. The first step you can take is to practice mindfulness. The application of mindfulness consists of taking notice of someone's internal thoughts and at the same time keeping a non-judgmental approach. Your ability to detach from the negative thoughts and feelings that are associated with a toxic relationship can improve if you engage in mindful practice. In addition to this, it can help you tune into your own needs and desires, which is beneficial when it comes to setting boundaries and learning how to say no. There are many ways to practice mindfulness, such as meditation, yoga, mindful breathing exercises, journaling, or mindful walks in nature. Another way to help you detach from your toxic relationships is to find a supportive community. Discovering a community that is there for you when you need support is an essential step in the process of emotionally distancing yourself from a destructive relationship. You can get the emotional support, encouragement, and feeling of belonging that you need from a community that is supportive of you. This can be especially helpful if you feel isolated or alone on your journey to detach from a toxic relationship, because it can provide you with a sense of community and support. Some ways to find a supportive community include joining a support group for supervisors of toxic relationships, volunteering for a cause that you're passionate about, participating in group therapy, or connecting with friends and family members who support you. Remember that healing takes time. It might take some time for you to recover from the emotional wounds caused by a toxic relationship and to detach yourself from this relationship. It's essential to practice self-compassion and give yourself the time, space, and patience you require in order to recover. In addition to this, it's essential to keep in mind that recovery is not a step-by-step process. There will probably be some good days and some bad days for you, and that's okay. During this time of recovery, it's essential to treat yourself with kindness and compassion in order to speed up the process. The process of emotionally distancing oneself from a relationship that is unhealthy for both parties can be challenging and excruciating, but it is essential to one's mental health and well-being. It's fundamental to determine which behaviors and dynamics in the relationship are unhealthy, to set healthy boundaries, to concentrate on oneself, to acquire the ability to say no, and to locate a community that is supportive. Keep in mind that healing is a process that takes time, and that it is vital to practice patience and kindness towards yourself throughout the journey. It is possible to emotionally detach yourself from a toxic relationship and move on with your life if you have the right support and tools to rely on during this process. We hope that the video has provided you with valuable information to better understand how to emotionally detach yourself from a toxic relationship. We would love to hear your thoughts, so please let us know in the comment section if there are other ways you'd recommend to end toxic relationships. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.